Hello, everybody. This is Quinn Curtis, and welcome to Joyful Living. We're so excited for you guys to be joining us today. And today we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by Joanna Turner, who is totally a soul sister and just an awesome, awesome woman. And I want to tell you a little bit about her before we bring her on because she's just phenomenal. Joanna, she calls herself an intuitive business coach. Well, and that's the work she does, actually. It's fantastic. She's originally from Scotland, now a digital nomad, traveling all over the world. Joanna is a leading intuitive business and success coach with advanced EFT and master NLP practitioner skills, and a former chartered accountant, which is such a cool blend, I think. She's a mentor to female entrepreneurs and specializes in busting money and visibility blocks. She acts as a bridge between the spiritual and business worlds, combining her strong business acumen gained from expending 17 years in finance and in boardrooms with the CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies and setting up offshore startup companies, with her years of personal development and spiritual practice, including being a certified Akashic Records practitioner. She was recently nominated for the Telstra Business Woman of the Year Award 2016 in the entrepreneurship category, which is no surprise here, because if any of you have had experience with Joanna or have connected with her, you know she is just a fire starter. And so I'm not surprised at that at all. I'm so excited for you and grateful to have you on, Joanna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Quinn. I'm really excited to be here. I love you and your message, and yeah, it was just a no-brainer.
Aw, thank you. Well, I think we're going to have some really juicy conversation today. So for any of you guys listening, just this is going to be a really great opportunity to really be digging in to that heart and soul space and really hearing what's in this conversation for you there. It's very tempting as we're listening to these types of conversations to kind of do it from a way that isn't very like heart and soul connected, right? But I would invite you to really take a moment and just get present, because there's going to be a lot of goodness and wisdom here, even beyond the words that are actually being said. One of Joanna's, I was just telling her this, I don't know if she's like comfortable in like me claiming this category for her.
I'll take it.
But in my experience, Joanna is such a powerful activator. And so just being in her presence and hearing from her can be a powerful activation for you into that next step with your heart and soul. And so allow that to be whatever it needs to be for you today, and whatever you desire it to be today. And I'm really, really excited for you guys as you listen in and just feel of what's here for you today. There's so much love, so much joy, and the world is your playground. So Joanna, the first question I always ask all of my podcast guests is, what does joyful living look and feel like to you? And the reason why we ask this is because a big theme we talk about on Joyful Living is that joyful living isn't necessarily something you arrive at. And it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of an experience where if you have the house and the dog and the beautiful kids and you've got all the money, then you're finally going to live joyfully. And it's more an owning that all of our own joyful living paths look different. And they are... the important thing is being attuned to our flavor so that we can create in alignment with that. So what does Joanna's flavor of joyful living look like?
So I just love that. Like there is, and I see too many one-size-fits-all solutions in business, online, with what we think we want. And so many people get their desires confused with other people. I had a client who was struggling, for instance, I'm getting to the point, but like to get results, because her big thing she thought she wanted was this house, and it wasn't what she wanted. It was for her mother, right? And so guess what? She was being a bit of a rebel and not getting the results, right? Because she didn't actually want the house. So it's about redefining it, what it truly means for you, for sure. So I absolutely love that. For me, it's been about living life on my own terms, being my own boss. That's massive for me. Being able to go to the post office in the middle of the afternoon instead of having to ask to get away from work early, right? Like that was what I was honestly most excited about when I quit my job. But just, I really love being the master of my own destiny, and that for me is massive. I think finding more and again, joy is not a destination. We have to find it now. And this is the secret to everything. It's the secret to success in your business, to finding love, to losing weight, right? Like, it's a secret to everything is to feel it now, you know, not when you have the house and the car, because you see so many people get that and they're empty anyway, and miserable when they have it. And they're like, oh, I actually thought it'd be more fun to get here. And then sometimes I'll even make a massive goal, and then I'm like, huh, that it? Ooh, that's horrible. So finding the fun in the journey, finding the things to be really grateful about. Yes, I'm in Mexico at the moment. I'm in Tulum. I don't know how you say it. I don't know, I'm on this journey and I keep getting attracted to all these spiritual kind of hubs across the world. I don't know what the heck is going on. I found myself in Byron Bay a few months ago. Then I've just spent a couple of weeks in Encinitas, California, with loads of hippies and spiritual people. And now I'm in Tulum, and it's just everywhere I go, I feel like I just go to places where there's lots of crystal shops. So I'm like happy camper. I also spent a few weeks in Venice Beach hanging out on Abbot Kinney. So I don't know what's going on, but anyway, for me, finding the joy in the now, I was like, I'm very lucky to be in Mexico, very grateful to be here. And I was floating around in the ocean, and I'm like, my life is pretty freaking epic. You know, like I just wanted to do that, and I just went and had my swim. But there's also the struggles, right? And I think one of the things I think we're going to talk about a little bit is about, I guess, my take on flow. And one of the things within it is that to ever get there, it's a cycle. So you have to go through a period of struggle. And I've also just been at a Brendan Burchard weekend, and he talks a lot about, his message is bring the joy, right? For a man, his message is bring the joy. It's funny. But he talks a lot about finding the joy in the struggle. And he's like, you've got to find the fun in everything. He's like, every time, because you'll never know what you're doing. He's like, he doesn't even know what he's doing, because he's stretching and growing himself so much that he's constantly in learning mode. And if your ego gets involved too much, and I certainly have an ego, I'm sure we all do, you think you should know all already, and we beat ourselves up for not knowing all already. So it's like finding that joy in the learning and going, hey, I'm just new at this. I don't know it all, but I'm going to like enjoy the process of learning. So I think it's a combination of things. For me, I'm trying to eat better so as I feel better as well. But again, I'm not going to beat myself up for not having that all figured out already. So it is just totally a process. And I think the gratitude and having more fun, and I think a lot of people in the industry generally take it so seriously, right? We're all, the bitching and the moaning that goes on in this industry is like insane, considering we're all trying to, you know, live more joyously and you know, and I'm like, why is everyone tearing each other apart? Like, you know, that kind of, we're not having enough fun in the industry. Like, it's like, oh, what's your problem? And this is terrible. And like, yeah, and people just aren't enjoying it enough. I think they're so stressed about money. And sometimes I just check in and I'm like, am I enjoying this enough? Like, seriously, like, check myself. Because I don't always. And I'm like, oh, hang on a second, you're living your freaking dream life. Like, check yourself. Like, you should be having more fun. And if I'm not, then it's, am I doing too much of something? And then I go through that process and outsource and get a little bit more intentional with everything.
I love it. And so a couple of key points that I would just love to highlight in what you were saying, which was all so good, is just there's a couple of phases here, right? So there's like the actual phase of choosing in to create the dream life, which I think is a big place where a lot of us get blocked to even like make that next step. And we also just get comfortable at where we're at, right? And so there's that part, but then there's also, I loved that you're bringing out that even in the dream life, it's still a process of being conscious of, am I enjoying this even, like, or am I just even going through the motions, you know? It was really fascinating. I went to Joanna's the Entrepreneur Live event in LA. It was fantastic. If you have the opportunity to go to one of her events, make sure that you do. You will not be sorry. But at that event, it was really fascinating how a lot of the entrepreneurs in the room were talking about kind of, it was a really fascinating conversation, but just about the get your picture in front of the Eiffel Tower and like make sure you look like you're having all the things, you know? And so it's just really fascinating that even in the industry, even with the coaches, like that you're seeing, are we even enjoying it? So any other thoughts on that craziness?
Absolutely. It's funny. I do have a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower, but
so good, right? Nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm just kidding. But it for me, and I think as well, we do a lot of this, we judge very quickly. And for me, that represented so many things. It represented that I was having a photo shoot, which was a massive breakthrough for me anyway. Now it's like photo shoots and videos, but that was, I mean, just for me to be seen, and because I judged myself so much, was a massive breakthrough for me. So for me, it was really a celebration of, and I used to look at all these other people from the year before that had these photos done in Paris, and my brain couldn't even compute that might be part of my life. I was like, what? They must be so successful, so different from me, so much better than me. And I, I was somebody who basically struggled with their weight and thinks they'll be single for their whole life. So the only people that have photo shoots are models and brides, and so it never had even brushed past my consciousness of being like having a photo shoot, certainly nowhere glamorous, maybe a headshot for my LinkedIn profile, but that would have been the extent of it. So yeah, that kind of thing for me was just so mind expanding, and like just to be able to see myself having that opportunity for a start, and then to actually be able to make it happen and follow through was massive for me. So yeah, a lot of, but even behind a photo, you don't see all of that stuff behind the photo, right? You just see somebody you think is like trying to do something. Not that we're but and yeah, it's not, Paris isn't everything, but I do think there's a focus on the wrong things in the industry at the moment. And for me, I came through a program where a lot of people had photo shoots in Paris, and I don't judge myself for going into that program, and I don't judge others, because it was fabulous, and I wouldn't be where I am today. I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for it. But I think in some ways I don't want to blame that. It's not that even, it's just other people, but there's definitely that like Prada handbag and super yacht focus, and a lot of people, and it's good because it gets some people in looking for that lifestyle, and they're like, oh, I just want that. But really, that it can't be the focus. It can't be the outcome of everything. For me, it's been about tuning into a bigger mission and a bigger message. And whether I ever own a Prada handbag or not, it's not really the point. But my mission is bigger than that. And so I think it's a really key thing to keep in mind, especially when we are in that fear-based place originally, because we're making it all about ourselves, right? It's about you and your stuff and your emotions and your fears, and what will they think of me, and will they judge me, and all of that stuff. And it's actually a little bit narcissistic, right? Because we forget that there's this bigger thing that we're on the planet to do, and there's people out there to be helped, and I had this thing about, I teach people a little bit about being visible, money blocks. So it sounds like I talk about money, but one of my taglines is never about the money. But it's like what gets people into the industry. Like almost doesn't, like if it's originally looking at somebody in front of the Eiffel Tower, but that's enough to get you into the industry, maybe that's great. And then you realize that it's not really about that, and it's actually about something else. So sometimes we have to, and I hate like weird marketing and stuff, but sometimes that's what people need to see first. Like our ego needs that first, and then we can tap into what's really true and what's really going on. I think if I'd been on a thing, like people were talking about these results, and I was like, oh, I could replace my income. Oh my gosh, this is exciting. I could do all these things. And that got me in. Now I'm like, oh, actually, I have an even bigger purpose. I want to help end women struggling. I want to change the world one village at a time by having my community come together as a village of women, and then we support one village at a time and really make a difference with what we do. Yeah, we can still live a beautiful lifestyle, but I think we need to shift the focus generally as an industry and it not be about the super yachts and whatever. It's also very fake and rarely true anyway. But at the same time, if it's going to get somebody into the industry, to like, it's enough to get them over. I think, yeah, what I was trying to say was, if I'd listened to the podcast, like the preview call a couple of years ago, and they'd been like, oh, you can help end world hunger or whatever, I'd have been like, meh. Because I hadn't developed myself enough to realize that that was more important, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I was still very much in, it was all about me, because I needed to get out of my crappy job, my crappy situation that I hated. And so my motivation at the beginning was about me. It was about the lifestyle and being able to travel and all of that. So now I can see more and more as I do more in personal development work, and I can see that it's not about me anymore. And by then I was making it originally about me, right? My fear, my stress, all of that. And then I had to have this massive moment of surrender, and I went into a massive place of love and going, oh my God. I had this big breakthrough and crying with a shaman. It was very interesting. And I was like, tears rolling down my face. And I realized the lesson was I had to love myself, so as I could get over myself, and therefore just love the room and love every person that was coming into the room. And it was just the biggest breakthrough moment of my life. Like, it was pretty intense. And that was the thing. I was like, oh, it's really not about me. And so taking that focus off me and just shifting it to loving everybody in the room was the thing that got me through. I think it's the thing that attracted so many incredible women into that space. And then that room, it just felt like it was full of love. I felt immediately that I was surrounded by friends, and like, I'd actually never been in I know it was my event, but I've never been in a conference room that felt that connected and that level of community from women that have never met before. And that was something that really stood out to me, but I had to create that from within me, if that makes sense. So that was a bit of a rant, but I hope that
it was so good. Yeah, no, I'm like, loving every minute. And oh man, just so many good points. What I was really loving, especially that last point of I even wrote it down. I had to love myself so I could get over myself and love everyone in the room. Like, that is profound, right? And I feel like for me at least, this is really where I feel a lot of mission activation of like that bigger cause, is because I feel like if we want to really like make an impact in our communities, like, it starts with ourselves. It starts with being able to make that impact internally, and then it starts with being able, like, in our small circle, like you were saying, be able to make an impact there. And so one of the things that I've seen that's been this is just a society thing, right? Is that we'll like raise money and send all this money to go help poor people in Africa, but we're not necessarily like helping rid the poverty within our own hearts, right? Like, we're still just so stuck in it that, yeah, we're going to send money or maybe we'll even go on a humanitarian trip, but it's not going to make lasting change until that change happens within, like what you were describing, right?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, like, not everybody has to send money to Africa or have that as their big mission. There's one amazing entrepreneur in this space, Kylie Slavic, and I know that her cause is human trafficking, because she talks about it. She doesn't talk about it every day, but she talks about it enough for me to know that that's a passion for her. And I don't think there's enough people talking about their bigger mission and their bigger thing in life, like the why, right? Why would you work with me over somebody else? Like, there's a bunch of mindset coaches. Yeah, I think I'm pretty good and I do a lot of different things, but and I bring in lots of different modalities, sure, but why would you work with me over somebody else? It's like, what do I care about? Why is that important? And that's important for everybody to focus on, because I get so many people being like, oh, I'm just another health coach, like why would anybody work with me, like why would they work with me over somebody else? And I'm like, because you're you, like that's the important thing, right? Like not everybody's going to hear the message from me. They have to hear it from someone else, maybe one of my students, and they finally go, oh, I get what she's saying. They don't connect with me, they don't like the accent, maybe, I don't know.
That's impossible.
I don't know, right? But or they might be like, oh, she said that thing and it didn't resonate, and that's okay. But it's like you have to just find the person that you resonate with and that you can get the message from. So it's about being more you within everything you do. And absolutely, so that people are buying you and not really what you do as much.
So, okay, this is so good. So 2 things I wanted to hit on right here and have us go deeper on. The first is I loved the validation that you were giving to, like, if the picture in front of the Eiffel Tower or the Prada bag is what gets you into, like, you know, getting your feet moving on your own path and like starting to bring your work into the world, then yes, that's amazing. Like, and in the beginning, it starts that way for a lot of us, right? But then over time, you're going to want it to shift into that bigger mission, which really is just, if you're staying in line with like that heart and soul, it's going to lead you there, right? So it's like staying in alignment along the way, which I think is so profound in what you were just sharing. And then the other piece that I wanted you to bring in with this conversation is you mentioned visibility blocks. And I know you have a lot of experience and energy for this. And I just think it's something we're not talking about enough. And so I would love if you would kind of explain a little bit of like what a visibility block maybe would look like, and then like how you would see like shifting that or why it matters even. Sure.
So I mean, I'm the queen of hiding. Just with somebody that's had this weight issue, I was the one at the back of photos most of the time. I'd be like trying to avoid the photo. So even being seen in my life, I mean, when I was slim, because I was in these big ups and downs, you'll see a ton of old photos of me for sure. But when I was bigger, I was hiding, and I just never put myself out there like that. So that's one way women can hide. They're very self-conscious of themselves or their style, or they feel like they're too old or too young or too fat or too thin or whatever, right? So there's this massive comparisonitis, I call it, and we're comparing ourselves to all these other people in the industry. She's so much prettier than me, slimmer than me, blonder than me. She must be smarter, therefore whatever. I've had all of those thoughts go through my head, and it consumed me for a while. So that's one element, the just lack of consciousness within it, lack of confidence, within it, the self-consciousness that creates
that too.
So that's one element of it. The other thing is, there's so many layers to this. The other part of it is the fear of judgment, massive. So especially if somebody is transitioning, I did the corporate, then started health coaching. That's how I got into this. I'm like, am I qualified enough? The fraud syndrome comes up. Who am I to do this? What will they think? What will they say? What if I'm doing it wrong? What if, who wants to hear me anyway? Who am I to do this, right? All of that crap comes up. I remember the first time somebody wanted to tag me in an Instagram photo. She's like, your account isn't even public yet? And I was like, no. And so I had to like make it public to let her tag me. And she was like, you need to sort that out. And then I was at a conference, and the guy was like, if you don't have a business page, you're not going to make it, says the guy. And I'm like sitting there like, I've just started, let me catch up, I'm coming, like I will, you know, I'm sort of fighting internally. I didn't say anything to him. I was like, I'll have a Facebook business page. It took me another 6 months to create a Facebook business page. And I was still in my job, and I was like, oh, I don't want to, what if my boss sees it? What if my manager sees it? What will my mum think? What will my sister say? You know, all of this stuff goes on. What am I going to post on it? I don't have enough stuff to share. and then I'm like, oh, well, it looks bad if nobody likes it already, right? So I went through all of that stuff in my head, which is just madness, because we all have to start somewhere, right? Even the biggest entrepreneur you know admire, for instance, you know, some of the biggest players, and they have only been in the industry 4 or 5 years, they're just a few years ahead of us. They had 0 on their email lists 5 years ago. They just didn't have anybody. They had to start somewhere. I had somebody say, I don't want to start a Facebook group because, well, there'll be nobody in it at first. And I was like, that's right. There will be nobody in it at first. But I'm like, but if you never start it, there will never be anybody in it. Right?
Right.
So things like that, we hold ourselves back. We put off having a photo shoot in front of the Eiffel Tower or not, wherever you want to have it, right? I feel like there's a shift coming back again, though, of making it more personal, of making it more relatable. I feel like it's sort of come full circle. I've had the one dancing on the beach. There might be some more of those coming. I thought it had to be super iconic to be impactful somehow. I feel like I'm coming back round again, and my next one will probably be more just me being me, I think. So you're probably putting off a photo shoot, right? Because if you have the photos, then you're going to have to share them. You're probably putting off having a video shoot. You're definitely not getting on Facebook Live often enough. You're probably not reaching out to do podcast interviews or saying yes when you're asked. You're probably not pitching to publications. And a lot of this stuff beyond ourselves, beyond just being seen, then there's also other impacts. There's what if I get too big too fast? What if I actually have to have a client? I get other people that are in that space. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's called sales avoidance, right? So people actually avoid bringing on clients. I said to one lady, she's like, okay, so this is my goal and I want to have 5 clients. I was like, fabulous. I said, what might happen if you did have 5 clients by next week? And she's like, I'd have a panic attack. I'm like, okay, right? We need, maybe that's not the goal right now. So it's, you know, so we actually, and then people, especially new people in the industry, if you're in the coaching, health industry, it's like, well, then I'd have to have conversations with people. I'd have to try and sell them something. If I'm seen, then I might have to actually try and sell something. And so then we go into the massive panic over sales and being salesy and not being salesy and not wanting to rip people off. And then our prices cause all these problems. And so visibility and money blocks, visibility is a money block. They're very strongly related. So then people, and then there's actually, they don't want clients because actually they have quite a lot of time at the moment. You know, they've quit their job, they're enjoying going to yoga, they've got no urgency, and actually bringing on, they're like, I'm busy enough building my website and, like, you know, trying to create pretty Instagram pictures. I don't have time for clients. You know, I had one girl being like, well, I don't want to miss Wednesday yoga. And I was like, could you go on Thursday? You know, like the things I have missed and had like put on hold to get some traction and get going is crazy. And I wouldn't recommend it completely, but it's like, what happened? The question is, what happens if I do make myself visible and if I do stand out? So for a lot of women as well, it's also not safe, right? Like, just from their childhood, I have a lot of clients who have suffered some abuse or trauma more than I want. Obviously, like maybe 60 to 70% of my one-on-one clients have suffered some form of abuse. And so for some women, it's not safe to be seen. You know, who's going to see them? Who's going to, you know, and then it becomes this, they feel massively vulnerable putting themselves out there, and it's not safe. So sometimes we have to go back and work on making them feel safe, like just within themselves anyway, so as they can then have the courage to go out and work on that safety element. I see other women gaining a ton of weight to keep themselves small because they're like, well, if I'm bigger, I don't want to do that interview. I certainly don't want to get on stage. I'm definitely not going to book my next photo shoot, because in their heads they're like, I'll have the next photo shoot when I lose those 10 pounds. or
Mm-hmm.
those 20 pounds have gained, or the 50, 60 pounds have gained. I've seen all sorts of things happen, especially when they're up leveling and potentially could explode or get big. They make themselves big to stay small. So, you know, it comes in so many different varieties. I've gained weight since I became an entrepreneur. And I nearly quit some photo shoots. I nearly cancelled the Paris photo shoot because I felt so horrible and bloated in my body. It was the last thing I wanted to do. But my lovely photographer, Wendy Yalom, she said if everybody waited till they were ready to have a photo shoot, she'd be out of business. She's like, nobody is ever ready. Nobody is ever at their perfect weight with the ideal clothing selection, with everything lined up, you know, divinely. She's like, you just have to do it with where you're at. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then I'll have another one when I reach my magical weight. And I'm still not there, but I've had multiple photo shoots since, because I'm like, I've got to be here right now and do this, because I don't have a choice. And so if I constantly wait till I'm ready, I'll never start. And I think that's going to be a really key thing for anyone listening. If you're waiting till you're ready, there's no perfect, you'll never be ready. If I had waited till I had the savings that I thought I needed, if I waited till I had the perfect body, enough knowledge, that's the other thing. I see people caught in this cycle of learning and learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. I even have a client in my mastermind, right? She gets on the phone yesterday. She's such a smart girl. She's done every course there is on the planet, right? She's so intelligent. It's almost intimidating to me, right? Super intelligent. But she gets on our mastermind call and she's like, so I have a confession to make. And I'm like, yes. She's like, I was really thinking about buying another program on webinars. And I was like, what? I was like, back up a second. I'm like, I know you've done Amy Porterfield's webinar course and that other one and this other one that was in that program and that fourth one that you did, right? And she's like, I'm like, and what's this fifth course on webinars going to give you, right? And she's like, well, maybe it's the secret sauce. And I'm like, or maybe you just need to do another webinar from a different energetic place. So that the last time she did one, for instance, was before we started working together and nobody converted. But she was in this very like, webinars don't work for me. Webinars don't work for me. What am I doing wrong? I must be doing something wrong. And also she had all the fear of what if I actually have to sell my stuff at the end of the webinar? So she kind of skipped over that bit. Then she's like, oh gosh, am I actually ready for clients? Right? So even though she's doing the steps and doing all the things right and doing the webinar, she wasn't energetically available to take on any clients. And so guess what? Nobody converted. Right? So I'm like, let's we've already done some work on that, but we're going to work more on that and the belief about bringing on people and converting over you coming up with a freaking new webinar method. You've learned all the best ways. And so that was just last night. That's just the first example that comes into my head. And yeah, I want to be the best at what I do. Yes, I will always continue my learning. I will always continue, doing another course. And I know you will, because we're obsessed, right?
Yeah.
But don't wait until you have all of that knowledge to start. It's, whatever you do in whatever capacity, you can help people now. Waiting for another 3 months, 6 months, a year, it's not going to make you any better. We get so much better by learning and trying stuff and just going for it. So I really have a strong, I'm very much in the just start. And I see so many other people. The other thing that comes from visibility blocks, sorry, I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
No, I love it. Yeah.
The other thing how it might show up, procrastinating, right? Scrolling through Facebook, like your house might be spotless. You're like, I'm not hiding, but I've got meals for the next month in the freezer. The house is spotless, and your wardrobe is in color, organized by color, and so is the bookcase by alphabet, right? And you're like, I don't, procrastinate. I'm just organized. I'm like, okay. So it might show up like that. It might show up in other ways, like sabotage in other ways. But the thing I was thinking of is, what I hear all the time is, if I just had clarity, I would start. If I just had clarity, I would be doing all of this stuff. And I'm like, So I call the lack of clarity a soft saboteur, right? Because it's really nice. You're not beating yourself up for being lazy or stupid or anything else. You're like, if I just had clarity, I would just be doing all of that. Of course I would. I would have that amazing business, right? So it's a nice way of taking yourself out of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I reckon clarity comes two ways. One, by just doing it. And you learn by doing it, like I did. I tried health coaching. That wasn't my thing. The emotional eating thing. I tried the next thing. And it wasn't until I like locked into what I do now. I'm like, oh, this is the thing. But I couldn't have gotten there. I couldn't have taken a straight line and got there immediately. I had to go through this process to get to where I am now. And so I see all of that struggle and all of that stuff as me learning what it feels like to be on the other side and to know what it's like. So I now have so much more empathy and I get it and I can talk about it because I get it. So now I know that's why I had to go through that. But if you don't start, you'll never know. I sometimes have people going, oh, I don't know if I should work with these people or these people. And they stay stuck on that for a year. And I'm like, why don't you go out, find 5 of those people and 5 of those people and see if you like it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so often they're like, within 5 minutes of working with one type of person, you're like, oh no, this is not my thing. So I did a bunch of coaching at the beginning, free coaching. I was like, hey, I gave a list. I'll do all of these things. And then by the end of that week, I was like, oh, I am not a health coach anymore. Like, I'm done. I can't do this forever. Not that it's wrong. It's brilliant for some people, but it just wasn't my thing, right? Like, I just quickly found that out. So go and do it. That's one way. And the other thing is releasing fear, like literally energetically releasing fear of all of those things that might happen if you get to, like actually having to take on clients and have those conversations and build a website. Sometimes people just don't know how to do that, for instance, and that's not what you need first anyway. But like, it's like, what are the consequences of you getting clarity? Think about those things, clear that stuff, and then it's like, ding! Like, I had one of my biggest breakthroughs in a session with somebody clearing my fear. I was like, well, obviously that's the thing, but I had like suppressed it because I was scared. And it's the thing that's changed my whole business. And so I knew it, I just wasn't doing it, if you know what I mean.
Oh, so know what you mean. I'm so grateful for you bringing all of this forward, because it's just such a powerful conversation to be looking at as you're contemplating, like, you know, do I listen to what my heart and soul is saying to do, or do I not? And so it's so funny. I love that you said about clarity being the soft saboteur, like lack of clarity. This is such a powerful one. And man, I'm just thinking about how many times that has definitely come up of like, well, I'm just going to sit and wait until I'm clear, and then we'll move forward. Then we'll do the thing. And so, but I'm so grateful also that you're bringing forward the fact of just starting, just doing it, because I see even just, you know, as a brand strategist, I have people come to me that they're like, help me build this brand. I'm going to be this thing. They've never been in business. They've never actually done the thing before. They're ready to invest all this money into their website and then like creating a program. But how do they know if they even really like it? So I love that you're really emphasizing the importance of like, play in it first, try it out first. And like, there is no harm done there. It is only help.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And that point of not like, I don't tell anyone. I'm like, how could you have a website? You haven't coached anyone yet.
Exactly.
You know? I'm like, why would you invest all that time and energy trying to write copy and all of that stuff when you don't know who you are? You know, so it's just so important. I have my original website. It's kind of morphed a bit, but it also needs a massive rebrand. I've been growing so much over the last 9 months, especially. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to land yet. So I'm like, before I go for a mass rebrand and have my full website rebuilt out, which will happen probably next year, I need to know exactly who I am first, because I'm not investing whatever X amount of money until I am absolutely sure this is where I'm landing with my message.
Yeah.
So, and you're always going to be growing and shifting, and you don't need an expensive website anyway to get started. And I think it's such a misnomer, and people get stuck on that, and then they get stuck on the tech, and then they get stuck tweaking their website instead of going out and getting clients. So there's definitely, they'll have a logo for sure, they'll have business cards, right? They'll have their domain, but they don't have a single client yet, right? And so they go out and invest a bunch of money, and then they're sitting there like, and where are my clients? Like, I thought I just built a website, got my logo done, and then I'd have some clients, right? That's kind of what I did. And I was like, maybe this is upside down, right? So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's like I would always tell, like whenever I've talked about branding in front of groups, it's always like, if you think you build it and they will come, like if you just spend all your time building it and they will come, you're going to be disappointed. It doesn't work that way. And especially not, I feel like what's happening with kind of the development of this new economy, which is really based on, like you said, people buying you, not necessarily even what you're selling. And so it becomes less about like having it all wrapped up in a bow, and more about like what makes you come alive in what you're doing, and what like lights your fire in what you're offering. And that's the message. And you do not need a fancy website. You do not need a perfect brand to do that. And what I loved with what you were sharing earlier is just how you were saying, you tried the health coach, you tried these other things, and you chose, I don't desire this, which is a very, very different perspective than if you've got it all on the line and you're like, oh, I just must suck at it. Right. And it's like personal instead of like being a choice. Right.
So that's a brilliant point. I want to just touch on that, because I don't want anyone to think that if something doesn't work immediately, that it's not the right thing. Okay. Yeah. Like, it's not because I wasn't good at health coaching. It's because I literally had enough of those conversations to be like, this is not my thing. And I see people while I evolved through my target markets, it's because it wasn't right, and I knew it before I even was doing them. And I'd sort of been pushed into one direction by a coach at one point, and I knew it wasn't the right thing for me. And so basically was when I got the balls to change it, that I stepped into what I wanted to do. So if any coach ever tells you to do something and it doesn't feel right, do not do it. You're under no obligation. It's got to be you. I hate that. I can't stand it. I will offer my coaching to someone, but then I'm like, if you don't want to accept that, go and prove me wrong. I will happily, be wrong, but hear from a place of needing to tell you what the industry is like or what the normal coach or practice is, it would be remiss of me not to tell you. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Here's my coaching on this. Or why are you trying to do that? And just digging in more into what the motivation is behind it, I think. But if they're dead set, I'm like, you go for it, and email me and tell me when it's you have a win. So that's awesome. The other thing is, if it doesn't work immediately, don't think it's just because it's the wrong target market. I had one client who she wanted to work with single moms and empower them and all the rest of it. And she was a single mom herself, so it was obviously something that really resonated with her. And she was passionate about it because she could see the difference that she'd made in her life. And she just wasn't, her Facebook ads weren't converting. And she was like, it must be the wrong thing. I must not be supposed to work with these people, blah, blah, blah. So she'd made this big story up in her head that she wasn't good at it. It wasn't converting, and it was all wrong. And so she did a Periscope, and she had one guy who was kind of a troll, but like, ooh, he was a young guy being like, how could I date this, sassy older woman, right? And she's like, so she comes in all seriousness and tells me that she's considering shifting her business over to coaching young men on how to date cougars, right? And I was like, okay, great. And again, I'm not going to judge it, but I was
Right.
like, why?
Right.
And it was the simplest thing. I was like, can you just send me those Facebook ads and that, like, and your lead page, and like maybe we could figure this out. And she was just running the wrong kind of traffic to the wrong type of ad, and that was it, right? I was like, that's just not how it works. Try this, right? And it wasn't like she had to dramatically abandon it or that she was a bad person or it wasn't working. And so just be very aware that sometimes a simple little shift or a tweak is all that's necessary, not an entire like pivot off into another direction. If that's where your heart's leading you, of course do that, but don't feel like you have to either, right? So sometimes just sticking with it a little bit longer is important, but it's sort of, it's a fine line, right? It's a fine line between flogging a dead horse and then it just needs a bit of time to germinate, right? A lot of the time what happens is, especially when you're building up a business and you're fairly new, a lot of people come into the space and then disappear, right? Oh wait, and it's like, it's fear, it doesn't work immediately, so they give up and they go away. And so a lot of people, they might follow you, they start to watch you, you or anyone listening, and they're kind of like testing you. So they're like, how long is this chick gonna hang out? If I'm investing in her 3-month program, her 6-month program, whatever that is she going to be there at the end of the 6 months? And I've seen it happen where some people aren't, right? For me, I'm in it for the long haul. There's no plan B. I show up consistently, and that creates trust, right? People are like, oh, okay, if I sign up with Jo for a year, I know she's going to still be in the game in a year, right? Like, there's no question in my mind that that's the case, and I'll show up for them for an entire year. But if it's just be cognizant, like people are watching you and they're waiting. And I had somebody email me yesterday going, I've been following you for ages and I just want to let you know that I want to work with you at some point in the future. Like, you're on my vision board, like it's going to happen. And I'm like, amazing, that's awesome. But like, I don't know if she's out there germinating away, just waiting, and I'm on her vision board, right? Whatever that, like, it's just funny to me. And I'm like, that's awesome. But just, I might, if I'd given up next week and she's just on the verge of making that decision, we'll lose out, right? So sometimes people are just waiting until they're ready or when you're ready. And when you're ready, the clients come. That's pretty much how it works.
I love that. And one of the big points that I felt was so powerful, and it's been kind of an underlying thread in everything we've been talking about, but really impactful in your event, was the point of following your intuition and letting that guide. So I wondered if, kind of in closing, if you had any thoughts on that or any counsel there.
Oh, absolutely. It's been such a lesson. So I think coming from corporate, I was just in my masculine, and we don't need to dive too deep into masculine, feminine, but the journey into my feminine and discovering I have that side and admitting it has been quite amazing. I feel like I've been cracked open, and suddenly I'm like, ooh, vulnerability, this is interesting. Ooh, my body, I have a body, right? Like, it's
not just
like
a brain,
I sort of like, I chopped myself off here. I'm like, ooh, I can feel into this. And honestly, my business, I've had to run it from instinct and gut, and I haven't had a huge amount of time to like research and thing or do this thing. I'm like, does this feel good? Yes. And I look back and I'm like, when it didn't, and there was some resistance, and I didn't trust that's when I've been burned or lost money, for instance. So this is kind of funny. I need to write an email on this, how my ego cost me $5,000. It's done that a few times. I tried to get on Infusionsoft. I was like, Infusionsoft is a big fancy CRM system. It's horrible, it's complicated, it's glitchy, and you literally need a pro team just to run your CRM.
I so agree.
You can't just have a VA that knows how to do MailChimp, right? Like, you need a pro crew, right? And a pro crew, it turns out, costs about $2,000 a month, just to do your Infusionsoft, and it in itself, I don't know, $300-400 a month, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on Infusionsoft. All the
At
big
least,
dogs,
by the way, like it depends on
right?
your list. Like one of my clients that I've been working with, it was 800 a month. Plus,
Right?
like, yeah, oh,
Plus,
gee, it
plus the
adds up.
protein.
Yeah,
Then you still need a virtual assistant and another
so
crew doing
much.
all the other stuff.
It's
And so
insane.
I'm like, I'm going to be a big player. I want to be seen and like taken seriously in the industry, thinking that my CRM would mean I was taken seriously. And so I like tried to go down this road, and it was the most biggest waste of my time, the
Mm,
new pro team's time. It just wasn't for me. It will never be for me.
mm,
And I was like, and I knew that. I freaking knew it. And I did it anyway.
mm.
I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll just pay for this big expensive team and it'll be fine. It was never fine. And I knew I shouldn't have. And it was this other distraction. Maybe it was a form of self-sabotage. I'm not sure. It was me trying to step up and play this big game. It was actually just a massive sabotage and a waste of money. Um, I'm now shifted onto Active Campaign, and it's excellent. And it's so much simpler. And it's cheaper, and you don't need a pro team. You'll be able to figure it out. And it's great, right? Like it's and I feel like with Infusionsoft things would have fallen through the cracks for me because it's just not my jam, right?
Mm,
If you love it, sure, do it. And people get so, because they get so entrenched in it, that it's actually really difficult to ever get back out again. So
mm.
even though some of those big players are still on Infusionsoft, it doesn't mean that they'd rather not be,
Yeah.
or that there is a better solution. So don't feel like you have to just because somebody you follow has it. And I see a lot of people trying to push people into it way too early, and they just do not need it. They do not need it. Even some people wouldn't need Active Campaign. Like, start with MailChimp. It's
Yeah.
free, or $15 a month. It's perfectly fine to start with that. But yeah, I then had to get out of it. And did you ever watch Friends back in the day when Chandler
Yes.
tried to quit the gym, and and he went in, and there's that girl in this leotard, and she's like, and he comes out and he's like, oh, and he goes home and he says to Ross, he's like, did you quit the gym? He's like, no man, I didn't. And Ross comes back and he's like, I'll help you, like I'll be moral support. And they go back into the room with the chick in the leotard, and then Ross is like, joins the gym, and so they end up both joining the gym. Right? Trying to quit Infusionsoft was a bit like that. So I would just really, if it's the right thing for you and you love techie stuff and you have a fabulous team, do it. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Okay, because it's hard to get out of.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And so powerful about listening to your intuition, even on like the right CRM for your business. Like, who would think, like, check in with that? But I love that you're bringing that forward because it's absolutely crucial. So,
I just want nobody to do that ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
yes, save yourself from that. No need. Cool. It's been just yummy and delightful to have you on the show. I've just loved everything that you're sharing. Before we end, well, first of all, I want you to just I've got some fun questions that I saved for the end, but before we go there, I would love if you wouldn't mind sharing just for a few minutes about some of the cool things that you're working on that people could choose in if they were like really intrigued and excited to work with you, and also your website so that they can connect and find you.
Perfect. So my website is missionforbalance.com, and I have a great free ebook on there which talks a lot about the transition that I went through, and all this 21 things all had to come together at once to create the finally, when I clicked into the change in my business. So have a check of that. Program wise, I have a 6-month group coaching program which is launching through November 2016. So we actually kick off in December, which runs about twice a year. So that's my big project, which I love. I'm hosting 2 big live events next year, probably both in the States. The first, we're looking at May, probably San Diego, to be confirmed, and probably then October, November. The other thing I have is a mastermind that runs all year long. That's for people that are really stepping up. My 6-month program is more for the newbies, 0 to 18 months, and then my mastermind is more people really stepping up, creating group programs, retreats, events, all of those kind of things, which are all the fun stuff that we go through in this industry. So yeah, if I'm also, you can add me as a friend on Facebook if I still have space. Follow me, you'll find me, join my group, The Entrepreneur Edge. And yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone, or if anyone has any questions, just reach out and I'll get back to you.
I love it. So fun. Such a great opportunity. Be sure to check out Joanna's everything. She's such an inspiring force for good and for really staying on fire and ignited in your business and with your soul. So definitely connect with her online with social media. Check out her website. All of these programs are phenomenal. So definitely check them out. Joanna, are you ready for some rapid fire questions before we end?
Yes.
Okay. So this is I love this part of the interview. This is my favorite. Okay, so I'm going to ask you super fast, and then I want you to just respond with like the first couple things that come up in your head, okay? Okay, so the first one is, what does joy look like with friends? What do you love joyfully with friends?
Just laughing and hanging out, and just we just laugh. We laugh so much. We crack each other up. We're just, we laugh.
I love it.
I don't even know. I'm like, what else? Yeah, that's it.
What are we doing? We're just laughing.
I don't know.
So good. Okay, I love it. Okay, next. That was really good. Okay, what about joy with family?
Good question. A bit of the same, having fun. I'm not home that much, but when I do love to spend time with my family. And I'm going home for Christmas, so I'm looking forward to Christmas in Scotland for once.
Oh, that'll be so good. Yay!
Yeah, I know. So cold, but yeah, so good.
Yeah, so cold. Oh, especially if you're in Mexico right now. That is a big...
I'm such a wuss. Like, they just laugh at me for that. They're like, yeah.
There's no sympathy. Like,
no, I'm wearing like 4 sweaters and my mum's in a t-shirt. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's not really an exaggeration either. Like, I'm like so cold. Like, I think my blood has thinned because I've lived like in nice tropical, life for a long time. So I can't handle it anymore. I'm just pathetic. But yeah.
So cold. Okay. How about joy with yourself? Just alone time.
I did go to the Museum of Sex last week.
I didn't know there was such a thing. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I just wandered in there. Let's see. I actually love alone time. I'm a kind of introverted extrovert. Like, I love doing this. I love connecting with people. I love my live events. But I checked in Mexico for 17 nights on my own, and the woman's like, "Will you not be bored?" And I'm like, "No. Like, one, I have a launch to run, but I'm quite happy fiddling around on my own, so I'm very easy in my own company. I read, I listen to podcasts, I exercise, I go shopping. Like, I just do stuff. I travel mainly on my own. I would love a partner, obviously, but I'm also completely at peace in my own company, which I don't think a lot of people are.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. Oh, that's a whole other topic for another day. That's so prevalent, but okay. And then the last one, joy with the divine.
Oh, it's addictive, I think. I've only I'm still a newbie. I believe in this with my connection, but it feels stronger all the time. And that guidance and the hits and the divine downloads, and when you're in that space and that's coming through, it's just wild. Through my Akashic records, I feel even more connected, and they're just creating profound changes for people. It's just sheer wisdom and truth, and it's love as well. And it's but to trust that and to lean into it. I mean, they'll test you, right? I've been tested a few times, but to lean into that trust. I think after my event, I'd pushed myself to the ends of my sort of capabilities, and on this planet, I think, almost. And it just became, it was supported straight through, and just, we sort of rode a wave with it. That after that, I was like, I think I'm fearless. I was not, and it's since showed out that I'm not completely, but to know how I was supported through that, my faith, I think, is stronger now than it ever has been. And I think that that's one of the big lessons we have to learn is that faith and trust and in yourself, but also with the greater plan. I see so many people being so wrapped up in it being one way, and I'm like, hey, what if you could get that another way? And they're like, no, it has to be this way. And I'm like, okay, fine. But be available and open for miracles, because they do happen.
Oh, I love it. Yay. Oh, thank you so much, Joanna. It's been such a joy to have you on the show. Thank you to all of you who've been listening. I'm sure that this has been, that you found some really good nuggets and have felt inspired and encouraged on your path. So truly grateful to you, Joanna. Thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you so much. You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, we are just sending so much love to all of you listening, and be sure to check out Joanna's website. I'll have all the links and everything in the show notes, so you can check that out as well. But meanwhile, we are just cheering you on in living joyfully today, not waiting for that, and having your beautiful life, creating that right now. So much love to you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.